Hi guys, I'm Sarah Stretton and welcome to Anatomy of Movie News, week of June 18th. So, Marissa, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Our first piece of news, Colin Firth drops out of the film Paddington. We all love Colin Firth. He was confirmed that Firth will no longer voice the talking accident-prone young bear Paddington, saying he was unable to find the right voice.
That's so sad. I love Colin Firth. Then again, I don't know if I really see him playing a Paddington character. He's not very adorable or anything.
I think Colin Firth, he's too suave and debonair of a man to play an accident-prone young bear, so I can understand why he would have a hard time finding the right voice to voice this character. But Firth did say it's been bittersweet to see this delightful creature take shape and come to the sad realization that he simply doesn't have my voice. I've had the joy of seeing most of the film, and it's going to be quite wonderful. I still feel rather protective of this bear, and I'm pestering them with all the suggestions of finding a worthy voice of him. So he's very still involved in the film, and it was a mutual agreement to leave the project.
And sometimes it's better for the film in the long run. We talked about Her, and this happened with the voice of Samantha, where Scarlett Johansson wasn't the original pick, and they recorded so much with someone else. And then they brought her in. She definitely brought a different spark to the character. And I think it turned out well. You never really get to see the glimpse of the original, but sometimes you do. I think it's nice that they're willing to look back and make adjustments.
Absolutely. And it's a great professional career choice to still be involved with the film. So it should be fun to see who they're going to find to replace his voice.
Who's so different than Colin's really thick accent.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of accents, let's go over to the other side of the pond, over with the Queen of England, who earlier this week made Angelina Jolie a dame. So she is an honorary dame, which is the equivalent of a knight for guys. She got this honor for her anti-rape campaign and her work against sexual crime against women. And so everyone knows Angelina Jolie has done large amounts of humanitarian work. She's a UN special envoy for refugees. She's constantly pictured in the media as working for charities and working for these groups. So she was officially honored. Her title, it's quite long, is the Dame Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George. But it's also not quite official. She doesn't actually have to be called Dame Angelina because she's not a citizen over there. So okay. It's a little complicated, but it's a huge honor.
Yeah, that's a big honor. It's great for Angelina Jolie. She has a successful acting career, obviously. And then to have a successful personal career and have those accolades and be recognized in that way and for all of her good deeds and humanitarian acts, it's great for her, and it really makes her a more well-rounded person.
Yeah. And she spends so much time. It's not just that she's the face of this. She does go and she speaks and she works hands-on. So I thought that was really impressive, and it is one of her, motivations in life is to do these wonderful acts. So good job, Angelina.
Great for her. And then, okay, so let's shift to Disney. Disney brands generated a record $40.9 billion from licensed merchandise in 2013.
Wow.
And that only makes sense because there's so many Disney owns everything. They are a huge monopoly. So from the Marvel superheroes and Disney princesses with Maleficent coming out, that came out.
Horns.
And so there's several major project pushes coming out in the 2014-2015 with the upcoming movies Cinderella, Pixar's Inside Out, the Avengers, Marvel's Age of Ultron, Star Wars is coming out, the new movie. So there's so many more merchandise that they're pushing everything, and that number is only bound to go up.
If they can make me a really good lightsaber, I would totally buy one.
Absolutely.
100%.
Amazing version. Who doesn't have a lightsaber? And also Mattel, Lego, Hot Wheels, Under Armour, all those fun, even Hallmark cards, they're licensing products for the Disney consumer products as well, and even Kellogg's. There's so many different brand items that we wouldn't think, but does go towards the Disney.
How many billion did you say?
$40.9 billion just in 2000
billion dollars.
Just in 2013, and that number is only bound to go up with all the upcoming films next year.
That is crazy.
Amazing.
Well, talking about another big franchise, not quite as big as the Disney conglomerate, but the new Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice movie that's coming out in 2016. It's been causing a huge storm, like talking about this becoming its own franchise, Justice League type stuff, competing with X-Men and whatnot. But they've added a new player to the game, and that would be Jason Momoa, who you guys might know as playing Drogo from Game of Thrones. So I am thoroughly excited.
You're a
that's
big
one
fan.
of my favorite shows of all time. So in Game of Thrones, he's just like this big hulking warrior, and his sentences are very fragmented and very like kill him, and it's in a different language,
okay.
so it is a little different. But he's set to play Aquaman, so that's a huge change. I think people are typically more aware of seeing Aquaman as like the blonde hair, blue eyed, and this is going to be a really different look, I think, and I'm excited for it.
Do you think they're going to go with a darker type of character with his acting personality for Aquaman?
I think so. I think it might be. To me, he's very strong. He's very just physically big, fit guy. Mm-hmm. I think it is going to be a little more earthy, a little more grounded, and a little. When they're dealing with him, it's going to be like dealing with a really big power. Aquaman was always fun, but he was very much, in my eyes, like the pretty boy. So I think that they're kind of shifting away from that. Or maybe not, and they'll transform him into the pretty boy, and I would just be shocked by that. So whatever it is, I'm excited to have him on board.
That should be fun. I mean, I love how they're bringing so many different characters and recognizable people from television to film as well. I mean, it's a huge transition.
Yeah.
And also, speaking of other films, a lot of films opened up this past weekend of June, including one, How to Train Your Dragon. But How to Train Your Dragon 2, this sequel. Mm-hmm. But DreamWorks Animation, which is How to Train Your Dragon, their stocks plunged 11% Monday after analysts expressed disappointment in the $50 million domestic opening weekend.
Oh no, just $50 million.
Just 50.
How horrible.
I mean, I think it's a bit premature for saying that because it's only been the first opening week. Hasn't even been open a week yet. But they're saying Wall Street's expectations was $15 million shy from what they were expecting. They were expecting a 60 to 70 million opening weekend, but it only generated 50.
I mean, I was surprised that it didn't take the top spot in the box office, and we'll get into that after our last piece of news. And I was a little shocked because I was so excited about this film, and I felt everyone I talked to was. But it's been competing with, we've talked about the trend of number one movie after number one movie, always changing. And I think that they do have to give these movies a little bit more time, and 50 million's nothing to like scoff at. That's really good, and the reviews have been really high. So I think its carryout is going to be much better. That's sad about their stocks. I'm sure they'll survive though.
Yeah, it's a solid film because their stocks was down $3 to $24.35 on a volume of more than 4 times its average. So that is a lot of money in the stock trades, but I don't think there's anything to worry about.
I don't either. I think they're gonna do pretty darn well.
Yeah, and the opening, it was still the studio's best opening in more than 2 years, so they're fine.
So there you go. Look at the positive side. Let's talk about what's going on in San Francisco this week. Hundreds of people rallied in support of the California State Film Tax Credit Bill. So we've been talking a lot about how a lot of film is being moved outside of LA, outside of California, to other states that are offering tax breaks, even other countries, even places like Canada, and then things are moving to Atlanta, to Louisiana. They're being very spread out. So California is kind of being like, come back, we're the center. And they do have some justification, in my opinion. So in San Francisco, over 500 people rallied because they feel like a lot of storylines surround San Francisco, but the city is only actually featured in these little bits because people can't afford to film there. So the AB 1839 bill would allow movies with greater than $75 million budgets to qualify for credits and also provide an additional 5% in tax credits if they're shot outside of LA. So they're really in support of that. They think that since storylines take place here, the city should be able to get actual filming time and see some of that money. Also, a lot of creatives live in these areas. And so a lot of these 500 people were actors, set designers, directors, producers, wanting to kind of bring the work home. Because if you look at it from their perspective, it's a story about their city. They live in their city, and they're having to go film somewhere else and travel to those places when they could just be working at home. And I do understand that. And being from LA, I think that if the story presides in one of these places, then keep it local. If it's shot in Texas, or about Texas, then go to Texas.
And also, it keeps the employment rate up in the area, too. If you keep the business here and keep everything in the industry here. So that makes sense. But also with the magic of movie making, you can shoot in different cities, but stage it to make it look like a story takes place in a certain city. So I can understand that.
Yeah, but there is this bill, and people in California are really gravitating towards it. And it's not, and I thought this was important because it is not just LA, which a lot of California was worried about. It was just going to be censored on LA, which is why they have this 5% for shot outside the LA area.
Okay.
It's very interesting. So let's move to the box office. We talked a little bit about How to Train Your Dragon, which came in surprisingly at second, in my opinion, for $50 million.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. It was surpassed by 22 Jump Street. That came in with $57 million. We definitely knew these were the two contenders for the week. I was proved wrong. Totally thought How to Train Your Dragon was going to come out on top. These surpassed Maleficent, Edge of Tomorrow, and Fault in Our Stars. So some really big switches going around. We saw Fault in Our Stars take the first place last week, and it's dropped the most. It's dropped to the 5th spot. If you look at Maleficent, I want to say, I might not be accurate, it was around the 3rd spot last week, so it's maintaining some consistency.
Steady.
And Edge of Tomorrow then, in the way, past Fault in Our Stars. So there's a lot of switching around going, and I think that's even going to be true for next week.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting that the number 1 and 2 spots are the sequels, and the other 3 spots are original movies. So, I mean, they had big followings from the sequel, and everyone wants to see the sequel. So it makes sense that it rings true with the numbers.
Yep, so we'll have to see what happens next week. And so you guys, tune in next week. We'll see you every Wednesday.